Billionaire in rags. Elon Musk's secret test at a Beverly Hills bank unveils a shocking truth. The streets of Beverly Hills shimmered under the golden afternoon sun. Among the luxury cars and designer storefronts, an unassuming figure shuffled down the sidewalk. His shoes were scuffed, his clothes tattered, and his baseball cap was pulled low over his face. At first glance, he was just another homeless man, ignored by the bustling crowd. Before we dive deeper into this gripping story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Epic Story Moments. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Like, share, and comment to support more incredible stories like this. But this wasn't just anyone. Beneath the worn-out clothing and scruffy beard was one of the world's wealthiest men, Elon Musk. Today wasn't a day for boardrooms or space exploration. It was an experiment, one that would reveal how society treats those it perceives as powerless, disguised and unrecognizable. Elon had chosen the Grand First Summit Bank of Beverly Hills as the stage for his social test. As he pushed open the gleaming glass doors, the atmosphere inside shifted. Conversations hushed, heads turned, and subtle whispers filled the air. Elon could feel the weight of their judgment as he stepped into the pristine lobby, his confidence hidden behind a humble exterior. Behind the reception desk, a sharply dressed woman named Marilyn glanced up. Her perfectly styled hair and icy demeanor contrasted sharply with Elon's rough appearance. She raised an eyebrow, her professional smile barely concealing her skepticism. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone flat and cold. "Yes," Elon replied calmly. "I'd like to open a checking account." Marilyn's eyebrows shot up for a brief moment before she regained her composure. "Our minimum deposit is $500, she said, enunciating every word as if doubting he could comprehend. "Do you have that amount with you today?" Elon reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled $20 bill. "I have this," he said plainly, holding it up. For a moment, Marilyn's facade cracked, and a faint, condescending laugh escaped her lips. She quickly masked it with her usual icy professionalism. "I'm afraid that won't suffice," she said curtly. "Perhaps you should try another institution." The tension in the room was palpable as Elon stood there, his calm exterior masking the spark of disappointment within. But this experiment wasn't over yet. "May I speak with the manager?" he asked, his voice steady. Marilyn hesitated, glancing at him with a mixture of irritation and curiosity. "Wait here," she said stiffly, before walking away. Elon stood silently, feeling the gazes of the well-dressed patrons around him. Some whispered, while others openly stared, their expressions ranging from amusement to disdain. Moments later, a man in a tailored suit emerged, Mr. Harris, the branch manager. He approached with a polite smile, though it faltered slightly as he took in Elon's appearance. "Good afternoon," Mr. Harris said. "How can I assist you?" Elon extended a hand. "I was hoping to open an account, but it seems there's a misunderstanding about the process," he said evenly. The manager's practiced smile remained, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. "I see," he replied carefully. "Perhaps we can discuss alternative options." Elon paused, then reached into his pocket, not for the crumpled bill, but for a sleek, unmistakable device that glittered under the lobby lights. Gasps rippled through the room as realization dawned on the onlookers. Elon Musk removed his cap, revealing his unmistakable face. The whispers grew louder. "This isn't about opening an account," Elon said, his voice calm yet firm. "It's about seeing how someone without wealth or status is treated in a place like this. And I think we've learned quite a bit today." The room was frozen. Marilyn stood pale and rigid, her earlier disdain now replaced with visible embarrassment. Mr. Harris stammered, "Mr. Musk, I assure you, this isn't reflective of our values." Elon gave a faint smile. "Perhaps not, but first impressions speak louder than mission statements, don't they?" Without waiting for a response, Elon turned and walked out of the bank. The lesson was clear, and soon, The world would hear the story of how a billionaire revealed society's hidden prejudices in one of the wealthiest corners of the world. The rejection hit harder than Elon expected, not because of Marilyn's words, but because of the cold indifference with which they were spoken. It wasn't anger or hostility, just a quiet dismissal, as though he didn't matter enough to warrant even basic respect. The subtle smirks and whispers from staff and customers around the room only deepened the sting. Elon glanced around the pristine lobby, taking in the polished marble floors, the extravagant chandeliers, and the leather armchairs where wealthy patrons lounged with their complimentary espressos. Among all this opulence, his worn clothes and crumpled $20 bill were starkly out of place, a silent rebuke to the atmosphere of exclusivity that surrounded him. Nearby, a young woman at a desk caught his attention. She was probably in her mid-20s, her crisp uniform neatly pressed, and her hair tied back in a professional bun. Unlike the others, her face didn't betray amusement or disdain. Instead, her expression held an unease, as though she was wrestling with an internal conflict. Her eyes flicked toward Elon more than once, and every time, she quickly looked away, her discomfort palpable. Elon memorized her face, sensing something different about her, a small glimmer of compassion in an otherwise cold environment. But before he could dwell on it, a firm voice interrupted his thoughts. "Sir, if you don't have the required funds, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," the security guard said, stepping closer. His posture was imposing, his tone leaving no room for argument. Elon nodded, his mind racing. The humiliation was obvious, but he stayed composed, even as the weight of judgment bore down on him. He'd entered this bank prepared for rejection, yet the reality of it was more piercing than he had anticipated. As he turned to leave, the murmurs from the patrons grew louder. "What does he think he's doing here?" someone whispered. "The audacity," another muttered, chuckling softly. Elon paused near the door, gripping the worn fabric of his jacket. He cast a final glance over his shoulder, scanning the room one last time. Marilyn was already back at her desk, engrossed in her computer, her earlier dismissal of him already forgotten. The guard stood with arms crossed, watching him intently, ready to escort him out if needed. And then there was a young woman. Their eyes met again, and this time, she didn't look away. Her face was etched with something Elon couldn't quite name. Regret, perhaps, or shame on behalf of her colleagues. It wasn't much, but it was enough to stand out in a room full of indifference. Elon gave her a small nod, an acknowledgement of her quiet empathy, before stepping outside into the blazing sun. The heat was oppressive, but it was nothing compared to the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. The experiment was only beginning, but it was already revealing uncomfortable truths. The wealth and power he often wielded with ease had shielded him from the realities faced by so many others, those without privilege, status, or the means to demand respect. As he walked down the street, blending into the background once again, Elon made a silent promise. This wasn't just about the people in that bank. It was about the millions who face the same silent judgment every day, their worth measured by their appearance rather than their character. The young woman's face stayed with him, a flicker of humanity in a sea of apathy. It was a reminder that even in the coldest of places, there was still hope, small but undeniable. Elon Musk tightened his grip on the crumpled $20 bill as Marilyn's dismissive tone echoed in his ears. "Isn't banking about helping people manage their money, no matter how much or how little they have?" he asked, his voice calm, but tinged with quiet determination. Marilyn leaned in slightly, her expression icy. "This is Beverly Hills, sir," she replied, lowering her voice with a touch of disdain. "We are not a charity." Her manicured finger pressed a button beneath the desk, summoning a security guard. Within moments, a tall, imposing man in a navy uniform approached. "Sir," the guard said firmly, his stance leaving no room for negotiation, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave if you're not conducting business that meets the bank's policies." Musk hesitated, his mind racing. He wasn't just here to test the bank's policies. He wanted to test its humanity. Yet the cold walls of privilege felt impenetrable. Reluctantly, he nodded and stepped back from the counter, but not before casting one last glance toward the young woman seated at a nearby desk. Her name tag read Clara, and unlike the others, she seemed uneasy. Her colleagues carried on with their tasks, oblivious to the silent struggle playing out on her face. Clara's fingers trembled slightly as they moved papers, her eyes darting briefly toward Musk before quickly returning to her work. As Musk turned to leave, their eyes met for a fleeting moment. In her gaze, he saw something he hadn't encountered all day, an apology, perhaps, or even a flicker of defiance. Outside, the sun blazed with the same intensity as the day before, but Musk barely noticed. He sank onto a bench near the bank's entrance, his mind replaying the interaction. The staff's reactions were exactly as he'd anticipated, scornful, dismissive, and indifferent. But Clara was different, though she hadn't spoken a word. Her expression conveyed a hint of empathy, a subtle but noticeable crack in the otherwise polished facade of the bank. Inside the bank, Clara sat at her desk, her thoughts swirling like a storm. She tried to focus on her work, but the image of the man at the counter refused to leave her mind. He had stood there with quiet dignity, even in the face of rejection and humiliation. Nearby, Marilyn chuckled as she recounted the event to another colleague. "Can you believe that guy?" she sneered, shaking her head. "He thought $20 was enough to open an account here. Some people just don't belong." Clara's stomach churned, unlike Marilyn and the others. She didn't find anything amusing about what had happened. Her mind was plagued with questions. Why had he come here, of all places? What did he hope to accomplish? Why had she done nothing to help? Asterisk, asterisk. As the day wore on, her unease grew. The dismissive attitudes of her colleagues felt like a betrayal of the very principles banking was supposed to uphold. By the time the clock struck 5, Clara made up her mind. Tomorrow, if the man returned, she would find a way to help him, no matter the risk. The next morning, Elon Musk returned to the same park bench outside the bank, sitting quietly as the city buzzed around him. He had no intention of re-entering the building. Yesterday's rejection still lingered in his mind, but the young woman's brief, uncertain glances kept him near. There was something about her, something genuine, that set her apart from the rest. Inside the bank, Clara's hands trembled slightly as she shuffled papers at her desk. She glanced toward the entrance, her heart racing at the thought of seeing the man again. Yesterday, she had let fear and hesitation keep her silent, but today was different. Today, she was determined to act. The stage was set for an unexpected confrontation, one that would challenge both Clara's courage and Musk's faith in humanity. But it's a start. Maybe if I show them that everyone deserves a chance, it could begin to change things. At least for me. It feels like the right thing to do. Musk's faint smile widened, his eyes glinting with something Clara couldn't quite place. Was it approval, curiosity, or something more profound? "You realize," he said, his tone measured, "that going against the system could cost you your job. Are you sure you're ready to take that risk?" Clara hesitated, her fingers fidgeting nervously with the strap of her bag. "I've thought about it," she admitted, her voice steady despite the fear bubbling within her. "And honestly, I'd rather lose a job than lose myself. If this place doesn't align with my values, maybe I'm not meant to be here. But if I can make even a small difference, then it's worth trying." Musk regarded her for a long moment, his gaze intense but not unkind. Then, without a word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the crumpled $20 bill, placing it gently on the bench between them. "Let's see what happens," he said simply. The next few minutes felt like an eternity as Clara led Musk back into the bank. The pristine interior, bustling with sharply dressed bankers and affluent clients, felt more intimidating than ever. Marilyn's sharp eyes locked onto them the moment they entered. She straightened in her chair, her expression a mixture of disbelief and irritation. "Clara," Marilyn hissed as they approached the reception desk, "what do you think you're doing?" Clara met Marilyn's gaze, her resolve hardening. I'm helping him open an account, she said firmly. Marilyn scoffed, her voice dripping with condescension. You can't be serious. He doesn't meet the requirements. We've been over this. Then let me vouch for him, Clara countered, surprising even herself with the boldness in her voice. If he doesn't meet the minimum deposit, I'll cover the difference. The room went silent, the surrounding staff and customers pausing to watch the unfolding scene. Marilyn's mouth opened, then closed, her usual air of authority faltering under the weight of Clara's conviction. That's highly unorthodox, she said finally, her tone less confident than before. Maybe it's time we rethink what's considered orthodox, Clara shot back. Banks are supposed to serve people, not just numbers. Before Marilyn could respond, a deep, authoritative voice broke through the tension. She's right. Musk stepped forward, his posture suddenly commanding, the aura of humility and meekness gone. He reached up and removed the worn cap from his head, revealing his unmistakable face. Gasps echoed through the room. Marilyn's expression twisted into a mask of shock and horror. The staff froze, their previous smugness replaced with wide-eyed disbelief. Elon Musk, someone whispered. The room buzzed with murmurs as the realization spread. Musk let the weight of his identity settle over the room before speaking again. Clara here is the only one in this entire building who acted with humanity and courage, he said, his voice calm but laced with authority. You all judge me based on appearances, but she saw beyond that. This wasn't just a test for her. It was a test for all of you, and most of you failed. Marilyn's face turned pale, her confident demeanor shattered. Clara, meanwhile, stood rooted to the spot, her heart pounding in her chest. Musk turned to her, a genuine smile on his face. Thank you, he said warmly. You reminded me that there are still people willing to stand up for what's right. As the staff and customers gaped in stunned silence, Musk pulled a sleek card from his pocket. Here's my offer, he said, handing it to Clara. If this place ever feels like it's holding you back, reach out to me. People like you deserve opportunities to make a real impact. Clara took the card with trembling hands, barely managing a whispered, "Thank you." Musk gave her one last nod before walking out of the bank, leaving behind a room filled with whispers and astonishment. Clara stood there, her heart swelling with a newfound sense of purpose. She had taken a risk, and while the future remained uncertain, she knew one thing for sure. She had done the right thing. Surprise, followed by a rush of relief. She had known this wouldn't be the last time she saw him, but she hadn't expected him to return so soon, and with such an air of calm authority. Marilyn hesitated, her professionalism wavering for a brief moment as Musk's quiet presence seemed to command the room. A deposit, she repeated, her tone still laced with skepticism. Yes, Musk replied smoothly. I'd like to make a significant one. And while I'm here, I'd like to discuss a few things about your bank's policies. Clara felt her pulse quicken. This was it, the moment where the consequences of her actions might unfold. She glanced nervously at Marilyn, who was already starting to recover her composure. All right, Marilyn said reluctantly, still clearly thrown by his unexpected reappearance. Please follow me. Clara watched, her eyes fixed on Musk as he followed Marilyn to the private office. Despite his appearance, there was an undeniable aura about him that seemed to shift the atmosphere in the room. It was as if the weight of his presence alone was enough to make the other staff members pause and reconsider their attitudes. Clara felt the sting of their judgment again, but this time it was tempered by a sense of pride. She had made a choice, and while she didn't know where it would lead, she stood by it. As the minutes ticked by, Clara's mind raced. She couldn't shake the feeling that Musk's return was not just about a deposit. He was testing something beyond just the bank's policies. Was it her? Was it the institution? Or was it both? The silence in the bank was thick with anticipation when Musk finally emerged from the office. Marilyn trailed behind him, her expression unreadable. Musk's gaze met Clara's across the room, and he gave her a slight nod, as if confirming something unsaid. Before he left, he stopped by Clara's desk. "Thank you," he said again, his voice quiet but resolute. "You've proven that not everyone in this place is blinded by the same narrow perspective. That means more than you know." Clara stood there, stunned, watching him leave. He hadn't offered any explanation for his sudden return, nor had he addressed the peculiarities of his visit. But Clara felt a sense of accomplishment nonetheless. She had made a difference in his eyes. The weight of his note from the day before, his words about her actions not being forgotten, began to sink in. Musk's cryptic message wasn't just a thank you, it was a signal. His visit, his deposit, and his words all seemed to indicate that he had something bigger in mind for her. As the bank settled back into its usual rhythm, Clara realized that she was standing at the edge of something much larger than just a bank transaction. The world outside might be one of rules, appearances, and protocols, but in Musk's quiet rebellion, she saw a glimpse of something else. A world where integrity and empathy were the true currency. And as she sat back down at her desk, Clara felt the stirrings of hope. Whatever came next, she was ready. Yes, but it's more than just a test. It's about revealing how deeply ingrained our biases are. I wanted to see if you, in a system built on wealth and appearances, could still make a difference by acting on principle. Clara's mind was racing. She had thought his actions at the bank were spontaneous, but now she realized there was a larger plan at play. "So you weren't just testing me," she said slowly. "You were testing everyone. The bank, the system, society." Musk nodded, his expression serious. "Exactly. It's easy to ignore people when they don't fit into the mold you expect, but it's harder to dismiss someone who challenges that mold. You did that yesterday, and that's why I asked for your help again." Clara was silent, processing his words. She had always known that the world had its fair share of inequality, but she never imagined she could play a role in challenging it, especially not by doing something as simple as standing up for what was right in a small moment. "So, what do you want me to do now?" she asked, her voice tentative but resolute. Musk smiled, a glint of purpose in his eyes. "I want you to keep challenging it, to never stop questioning the system, even when it's difficult, to stand firm in your values, even when others don't understand. And when you see something wrong, don't look away, do something about it." Clara felt the weight of his words settle deep within her. She was just a trainee at a bank, just one person in a vast, complicated system. But in that moment, she realized that even small actions could ripple out and start to change things. She could be part of something bigger, something more significant. "I'll help," she said quietly, her voice steady. "I don't know exactly how yet, but I will." Musk gave her a knowing smile, the same one that had first caught her attention. "That's all it takes. The rest will follow." As they stood there, the evening sun casting long shadows, Clara felt something shift within her. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but for the first time, she felt truly ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. "Help! Don't hesitate to let me know," Reynolds added, his eyes lingering on Clara, his suspicion palpable. Musk smiled, but didn't respond immediately. He simply nodded and turned to Clara. "Thank you for handling everything so smoothly," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. Clara handed him the receipt, her fingers still trembling as the weight of the situation pressed down on her. She could feel Reynolds' gaze burning into her, but she forced herself to maintain composure. "You're welcome," she said, though her mind was spinning with questions. What was going on? Why the sudden deposit? And why was he being so open in front of everyone? Musk turned to leave, but before he reached the door, he paused and looked back at Clara. "I'll be in touch," he said simply, his tone laden with unspoken meaning. Clara watched him leave, her heart racing. As the door closed behind him, she felt the tension in the room lift slightly, but the unease remained. She couldn't help but wonder what Musk was really up to. The sense of urgency she had felt when he offered her the job still lingered in her chest. But now there was a new layer of uncertainty. As the day wore on, Clara tried to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Musk and the mysterious opportunity he had presented. What kind of job was he offering? And what would it mean for her life? She was stuck in a system that often seemed more concerned with profits than people. Would working with Musk help her make a difference? Or was she walking into something far bigger than she had anticipated? Just as she was lost in thought, Marilyn's voice broke through her musings. "Clara, do you have a moment?" Clara turned to find Marilyn standing beside her desk, her expression tight. "I saw that deposit. What's going on with that client of yours?" Marilyn's tone was sharp, accusing. Clara forced herself to remain calm, her voice steady. "It's all in order, Marilyn. Just a regular deposit." Marilyn didn't seem convinced, but she didn't press the issue further. Instead, she shot Clara a look of warning before walking away. Clara exhaled, feeling the weight of the unspoken tension. She couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to change, and she wasn't sure she was ready for whatever was coming next. As the day drew to a close, Clara felt a sense of quiet anticipation building inside her. She didn't know when Musk would contact her again or what he would ask of her next, but she knew one thing for sure. Her life had just taken an unexpected turn, and she was about to step into a world that would challenge everything she thought she knew about right and wrong, success and failure. And for the first time in a long while, Clara felt ready to face whatever came next. Everyone to hear, "I think it's time we have a conversation." His words sent a ripple of murmurs through the room as Clara rose from her desk, her heart pounding in her chest. She was acutely aware of the eyes on her, the whispers that had already started to spread among the staff. Clara followed Musk down the hallway, her mind racing with thoughts of what had just transpired. She had never imagined this would be the outcome when she helped him that first day. Now, he was not only an influential figure, but someone who was shaking the very foundation of the institution she had worked in for years. When they reached a small meeting room, Musk turned to face her. His demeanor was calm but intense, as if every word he said carried immense weight. "Clara," he began, his voice low but clear, "you've shown a kind of integrity that I don't see often. You've done something that very few people would have the courage to do, and that's why I'm giving you this opportunity. You don't just work here anymore. You're going to be part of something bigger." Clara blinked, still processing the reality of the situation. "I don't understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're acquiring the bank. But what does that mean for me?" Musk smiled, a flicker of something akin to pride in his eyes. "It means you're going to be in a position to help build something new. We're going to change the way financial institutions operate, focusing on people, not just profits. And I want you to be part of that transformation." Clara felt a wave of emotion rush through her. This was everything she had ever wanted. A chance to make a real difference, to work for something that aligned with her values. But it was also a leap into the unknown, one that required her to step away from the stability of her old life. "You'll need to make a choice," Musk continued, his voice softer now. "This won't be easy. It will require courage, hard work, and dedication. But if you're ready for it, I'm offering you a role on my team. You will be integral in helping shape the future of this institution." Clara stood there, her mind swirling with possibilities. She had always wanted to do something meaningful, to contribute to a cause bigger than herself. And now, it seemed that the opportunity was within her grasp. She took a deep breath, looking Musk in the eyes. "I'm in," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Musk's smile widened, and for the first time, Clara felt like she was standing on the edge of something extraordinary. "Welcome aboard," he said, offering her a firm handshake. "Let's change the world." As she walked back to her desk, Clara couldn't help but feel the weight of the decision settle in. Her life had just taken a turn she couldn't have predicted, but it was one she was ready to embrace. The days ahead would be challenging, but for the first time, she felt certain of one thing. She was exactly where she was meant to be. Musk's gaze remained steady as he continued. "We show them that it works by proving that a bank can operate on these principles and still be successful. It's not about reinventing the wheel, Clara. It's about making the wheel work for everyone, not just those at the top." He paused, letting his words sink in. Once we can demonstrate the success of this new model, the old institutions will have no choice but to follow. Clara absorbed the magnitude of what Musk was suggesting. They weren't just rethinking the systems of finance. They were reinventing them entirely. But that kind of change required more than just new technology or better customer service. It would require an entirely new mindset, one that Clara could feel stirring deep within her. "I understand," Clara said, her voice steady but filled with newfound determination. "It's not going to be easy, but it's worth fighting for." Musk nodded in approval. "Exactly. It won't be easy, but it will be transformative. And you'll be leading the charge." Over the next few weeks, Clara worked tirelessly alongside Musk's team, diving deep into the intricacies of banking and technology. She met with experts in every field, from social impact leaders to fintech innovators, absorbing knowledge at an astounding rate. The project was far-reaching, but Clara was driven by the sense that they were on the verge of creating something truly groundbreaking. One afternoon, Musk called Clara into his office. She entered, expecting to review another set of numbers or projections, but instead, Musk had a look of quiet excitement in his eyes. "Clara," he said, "we've made a breakthrough. We've found a partner who's willing to help us pilot our new banking model. This is a first step in taking what we've created and turning it into reality." Clara's heart skipped a beat. This was a moment they had been working toward, the opportunity to show the world that banking could be more than just a business. It could be a force for good. "Who's the partner?" she asked, eager to know more. Musk smiled. "That's the best part. It's a major financial institution, one of the biggest in the world. And they're ready to let us show them how a new model can be done. They want to prove that they can be leaders in social impact and sustainability." Clara was stunned. "This is really happening?" "It is," Musk said, his tone confident. "And we're going to do it together. The world isn't ready for what's coming, but we're about to show them." As Clara left Musk's office, she felt the weight of everything they had worked toward. The road ahead would be difficult, full of challenges and uncertainty. But for the first time in her life, Clara felt sure of one thing. She was on the right path. And this time, it wasn't about doing what was easy. It was about doing what was right. Platforms. With each new advancement, Clara's confidence grew. She was no longer just a woman who had once helped Elon Musk from a seemingly inconspicuous place. She was now at the heart of a global movement that was shaping the future of banking. As the months passed, Clara's leadership began to shine. She wasn't just focused on numbers and profits. She was working tirelessly to ensure that each change made in the banking system could help bridge the gap between the privileged and those traditionally left behind. Musk had always stressed the importance of empathy in finance, and Clara found herself living that philosophy every day. One evening, after a particularly intense round of meetings, Musk invited Clara to dinner at one of his favorite restaurants. Over a quiet meal, he leaned in and spoke to her candidly. "You've come a long way, Clara. You've not only built systems that work, but also cultures that matter. You've shown me that it's possible to change an entire industry from the inside out. But the real question is, do you believe we can change the world?" Clara paused, reflecting on how much had changed over the past year. The journey had been challenging, exhausting, but incredibly rewarding. She'd seen firsthand the impact of their work, how technology and compassion could work together to lift people up, and it was more than she ever thought possible. "I do," Clara said, her voice filled with conviction. "And I know that we're just getting started." Musk smiled, a look of quiet satisfaction crossing his face. "I believe you too," he said. "But remember, Clara, change in the world is never going to be easy. There will always be resistance, always be obstacles. But if we keep moving forward, we can create something that not only outlasts us, but outshines everything else." Clara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders. She had always believed in the power of compassion and fairness, but now she had the chance to bring that vision to life on a global scale. The road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, but Clara knew with absolute certainty that she was ready. As she continued her work, expanding the reach of their model, Clara made it her mission to ensure that the changes they were implementing weren't just about financial systems. They were about creating a legacy that prioritized humanity over profit. And with every successful project, every breakthrough, Clara felt more empowered to continue pushing the boundaries of what was possible. The world was changing, and Clara was at the forefront of that transformation. And for the first time in her life, she knew that the path she was on wasn't just the right one. It was the one that would lead to a future where everyone had a chance to succeed. Clara couldn't shake the weight of the responsibilities she was carrying. The transformation of financial institutions was not an easy task, and the pressure to keep pushing forward weighed heavily on her. However, each step she took, every challenge she overcame, reinforced her commitment to the work she was doing. Her leadership skills were continuously tested, not only by the resistance within her teams, but also by external pressures from the wider industry. But Clara remained steadfast in her belief that the work she was doing had a purpose. One afternoon, while reviewing progress on a project, Clara received a call from Musk. His voice was calm but urgent. "Clara, I need you to step up once more," he said. "We're at a pivotal moment in this revolution. We've done incredible work so far, but we need to take it to the next level. Are you ready?" Clara didn't hesitate. She knew what was at stake. The opportunity to truly reshape the financial landscape was within reach, and she had never been more ready to rise to the occasion. "I'm ready," she replied, her voice filled with determination. Over the following months, Clara led her team in implementing the most ambitious project yet, an integrated digital banking system that would allow small, underserved communities to access essential financial services remotely. The initiative combined cutting-edge technologies like AI and blockchain with personalized customer support systems to ensure financial literacy and inclusion for everyone, regardless of background. The project encountered challenges that tested every ounce of Clara's resolve. Long nights of brainstorming, countless revisions, and debates with stakeholders seemed never-ending. But Clara's belief in the mission kept her moving forward. She leaned on her team, each member contributing their expertise, while fostering an environment of mutual respect and collaboration. Clara's leadership wasn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It was about empowering others to find their own strength. Finally, the system went live, and its impact was immediate. Customers who had been excluded from traditional banking now had access to a range of services, from savings accounts to microloans. Communities that had once struggled to survive financially were suddenly thriving, as they gained access to the tools needed to secure their futures. The success of the initiative reverberated across the industry. News outlets and financial analysts lauded the project as a game changer. Clara's name became synonymous with innovation in the banking world. But she remained focused on the mission, never losing sight of the people she was helping. One evening, as Clara stood at the forefront of a press conference celebrating the success of the digital banking rollout, she found herself reflecting on her journey once more. She thought back to the uncertain woman who had once worked at a traditional bank, unsure of her place in a world dominated by wealth and status. She had come so far since then. Musk stood beside her, his usual calm presence offering support, but it was Clara who had taken charge of this revolution. "I couldn't have done it without my team, and I couldn't have done it without the vision Musk had for me from the beginning," Clara said during her speech. "But most importantly, I couldn't have done it without the belief that finance can be a force for good." The applause that followed was thunderous. Clara felt a surge of gratitude and pride. It was a moment she had once only dreamed of, but now it was her reality. And for the first time, she understood fully why she was there, not just to challenge the systems that had failed so many, but to build something better, something that could truly make a difference. As the night ended and Clara stood with Musk, the industry's focus on her work had shifted from skepticism to admiration. Yet Clara knew this was just the beginning. She was part of something much larger than herself, a movement that had the potential to change the world. And with each new challenge, Clara felt more certain that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Bank was only the beginning of a larger movement Clara had set into motion. She now saw the profound impact of her journey, not just on her career, but on the entire financial landscape. Equity First had proven that doing what was right by people, not just by profit, could revolutionize an industry. More than just a bank, it had become a symbol of what was possible when ethical practices met innovation. As Clara continued to lead the charge, she found herself facing even greater challenges. The pressure to maintain the bank's success, expand its reach, and continue to challenge the status quo never let up. Yet, with every new hurdle, Clara felt a growing sense of fulfillment. She had long surpassed her initial doubts and insecurities. She was no longer just a participant in this revolution. She was one of its driving forces. But there were still moments when the weight of it all pressed down on her. She had learned that leadership wasn't just about making decisions or delivering results. It was about listening to the needs of her team, the communities they served, and most importantly, herself. The lessons about balance, which Musk had taught her, were continually tested. But Clara had come to understand that the strength of her vision depended on her ability to stay grounded. One evening, after a particularly intense round of meetings, Clara sat in her office, reflecting on everything she had accomplished. She thought about the late nights, the sacrifices, and the moments of doubt that had seemed insurmountable at the time. And yet, here she was, standing at the helm of a movement that was changing the world. As Clara prepared to leave the office that night, she saw a message from Kelly, her roommate. "Remember, you're doing great, but don't forget to breathe." Clara smiled, a sense of peace settling over her. The reminder to take care of herself, to pause and reflect, had become more important than ever. She had come a long way since that first day at the bank, and though the road ahead was still uncertain, Clara knew she was exactly where she needed to be. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, Clara felt ready for whatever came next. With a renewed sense of purpose, she stepped out into the night, determined to continue building the future of banking, one that was as much about people as it was about profit. Beginning, as Clara observed the faces of the customers, she knew that each one represented a step toward a larger, more inclusive future. The challenges had been immense, but every success, every new branch opened, and every smile from a customer reassured her that she was on the right path. In the months that followed, Clara's vision continued to take shape. The mobile banking units had expanded beyond rural towns, reaching indigenous communities, remote islands, and areas that had been neglected for decades by traditional banks. Each community, each story, reinforced Clara's belief that the future of banking was not just about technology or systems, but about human connection and empowerment. As her initiatives gained global attention, Clara was invited to work with international organizations aiming to bring financial services to even the most marginalized populations. She began collaborating with nonprofits, governments, and social enterprises to create global financial literacy programs, helping people understand how to manage money, invest, and build financial security for themselves and their families. However, with global expansion came its own set of hurdles. Different cultures, economies, and regulatory environments presented new challenges. But Clara, with her grounded leadership and team-oriented approach, navigated each obstacle with the same resilience that had gotten her this far. She found herself growing not just as a leader, but as a global advocate for equity in finance. Yet, amid all this growth, Clara never lost sight of her core mission, creating a financial system that worked for everyone. One evening, as she sat in her office reflecting on everything she had achieved, she thought back to the man in ragged clothes who had first sparked her journey. If she had never helped him, would she have ever understood the need for this change? Clara realized that every step, every challenge, and every breakthrough had been part of a much larger journey, not just for her, but for the world. She glanced out the window, watching the city lights flicker like stars. The revolution she had helped lead was no longer just about creating a new bank. It was about creating a new way of thinking about finance, one where the people mattered more than the profits, where dignity and respect were integral parts of every transaction, and where communities were empowered to shape their own financial futures. Clara knew there was still much work to be done. but for the first time, she felt a deep sense of peace. The future was uncertain, but with the team she had built, the vision they shared, and the unwavering belief in their mission, Clara felt confident that they could continue to push the boundaries of what was possible. The story of Equity First Bank had only just begun, and Clara was determined to keep writing its chapters with the same passion and purpose that had started it all. Over profits, to put dignity above transactions, and to ensure that everyone, regardless of where they are from or what they have, has access to the same opportunities. The room fell silent as her words resonated deeply, and when she finished, the applause was deafening. Clara's keynote address at the summit marked a pivotal moment in her journey. The global financial community began to take notice, and soon governments and private institutions approached her for guidance on creating more inclusive financial systems. Clara was invited to advise on policy reform, working alongside leaders from around the world to advocate for equitable financial practices. As the global expansion of Equity First Bank continued, Clara remained deeply connected to the communities she was serving. She made it a point to visit each region personally, meeting with local leaders, customers, and employees. She wanted to ensure that the essence of what they had built, compassion, respect, and empowerment, remained intact, no matter where they operated. One such visit took Clara to a remote village in the Amazon, where the introduction of mobile banking had opened up new avenues for small-scale artisans. Clara met Maria, a craftswoman who had struggled for years to sell her handmade goods in a fair and sustainable market. With access to secure financial tools, Maria was able to expand her business and connect with customers far beyond her local community. Before this, I had no way to save my earnings, Maria said, her eyes shining with gratitude. Now, I'm able to plan ahead, and my children will have opportunities one never dreamed of. Clara smiled, moved by the transformation she had witnessed in Maria's life. This was the heart of what she had set out to do: create systems that empowered individuals, helped them thrive, and allowed them to dream bigger. Despite the progress, Clara never lost sight of the challenges that remained. As Equity First Bank scaled internationally, maintaining the balance between rapid growth and staying true to their founding principles became increasingly difficult. Some regions struggled with regulatory hurdles, while others faced cultural barriers to accepting a new way of doing things. But Clara's philosophy had always been rooted in long-term sustainability, and she knew that if they wanted to build a lasting legacy, they needed to remain committed to listening, adapting, and evolving. During a particularly challenging phase in their global expansion, Clara and her team faced pushback from entrenched banking systems in Europe. Critics questioned the practicality of a more compassionate, people-first model, suggesting that it would never succeed in a profit-driven market. Clara, undeterred, organized a series of roundtable discussions with financial leaders, academics, and social innovators, inviting them to rethink what success in banking could look like. In one of these sessions, Clara shared the story of a small rural community in South America where, after just 1 year of operating, access to formal banking had led to a 50% increase in local entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs were now able to invest in their businesses, create jobs, and bring in more sustainable resources for their families. This isn't just about numbers, Clara told the room. It's about changing the very fabric of society by empowering individuals to take control of their financial futures. Her words began to shift the conversation. More and more influential voices joined the movement, and soon, even the staunchest critics started to acknowledge the potential of a model that put people before profits. It wasn't long before major financial institutions, initially skeptical, reached out to Clara to discuss partnerships and collaborations aimed at promoting financial inclusion. Musk, ever the visionary, continued to support Clara from behind the scenes. "You've turned this from a dream into a movement," he said to her during a quiet moment after another successful international launch. "And you're right, this is only the beginning. You've proven that it's possible to change the way the world does finance." Clara's eyes sparkled with determination. "We've done incredible things," she said, "but the real work begins now. There are still millions of people who haven't experienced what we've built, and for them, We're not stopping until every person has access to what they deserve, a fair chance. With that resolve, Clara continued to push the boundaries of what was possible. As the global movement for inclusive banking spread, she kept her focus on the people at the heart of it all. Whether in Africa, Asia, South America, or Europe, Clara's vision for a more compassionate financial system grew ever closer to reality. And as she continued her travels, meeting with world leaders, entrepreneurs, and change-makers, Clara knew that while the road ahead would undoubtedly have its challenges, they were on the right path. Equity First Bank was no longer just an institution. It was a beacon of hope, a symbol of change, and a testament to the power of believing in a better way. The story of its success had only just begun, and Clara was determined to lead it to even greater heights. Gone! The world is already different because of what you've built. Clara stood in silence for a moment, reflecting on how far they had come. From a small idea sparked by Musk's experiment to a global movement that had touched millions of lives, Equity First Bank had transcended its role as a financial institution. It had become a symbol of hope, inclusion, and opportunity, a testament to the belief that financial systems could and should serve the people. Clara knew the work wasn't done. There were still barriers to break, challenges to overcome, and communities to reach. But she also knew that the foundation they had laid was unshakable, and that the ripple effect of their work would continue to spread, inspiring others to follow their example. As she and Musk stood together, looking back at the stage where she had just delivered her speech, Clara realized that the true power of their mission lay not just in the success of their bank, but in the people who had joined them along the way. Their dedication, their belief in the possibility of a better world, and their relentless pursuit of justice and equity had made this all possible. And now, as Clara looked forward to the future, she felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. The next generation of leaders was already in motion, ready to carry the torch even further, building on the legacy of Equity First Bank and ensuring that no one was ever left behind again. "I think you're right," Clara said softly to Musk. "This is bigger than us. It's about all of us, and it's just the beginning." Musk smiled, a rare moment of humility in his eyes. "You're the one who's made it real, Clara. The future is in good hands." With that, they turned their attention back to the bustling world around them. The journey was far from over, but Clara knew that together, they had already changed the world, one act of kindness at a time. And with every step they took, they were building a world where everyone had the chance to dream bigger and reach higher, just like Clara had once done. The revolution in banking was now a global movement, one that would continue to reshape the financial landscape for generations to come. Clara's vision of accessible, inclusive, and compassionate finance had not only changed the way people saw the banking industry, it had redefined what was possible for the future of humanity. As Clara transitioned into a more advisory role, she began focusing on preparing her successors, ensuring that the values at the heart of Equity First Bank would continue to guide its future. One of her most promising mentors, a young woman named Amara, reminded Clara of herself in her early days, idealistic, determined, and full of potential. During their last mentoring session, Clara passed on the same advice Musk had given her years ago. "Don't be afraid to challenge the system," Clara said. "The hardest battles are often the most important ones. And remember, it's not about perfection. It's about progress." Amara nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "I won't let you down," she said. Clara smiled warmly. "I believe in you." On a quiet evening, Clara found herself back on the park bench where her journey had begun. The memory of Musk, in his ragged clothes, sitting at the bank counter with $20, felt both distant and vivid. She thought of how much had changed since that day, how one small decision had set her on a path she could never have imagined. Musk joined her a few minutes later, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "I thought I'd find you here," he said, handing her a cup. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the world go by. Finally, Clara spoke, her voice thoughtful. "Do you think we've done enough?" Musk took a sip of his coffee, his gaze thoughtful. "Enough? No," he said, "but we've done something, and that something has inspired countless others to do more." That's how change works. It's never about one person or one action. It's about the ripple effects. Clara nodded, a sense of peace settling over her. She knew the work would never truly be finished, but she also knew they had made a difference. As Clara and Musk walked away from the bench, the sun set behind them, casting the city in a warm golden light. Their journey had been filled with challenges, triumphs, and lessons that neither could have anticipated. But the true legacy of their work wasn't in the buildings they had constructed or the systems they had changed. It was in the lives they had touched, the opportunities they had created, and the hope they had inspired. Clara knew that the future was bright, not because the work was done, but because it had only just begun.